Chance to turn on the live stream. Looks like he has done that. And we are back on the discussion about the soil conservation. And I think it's fairly obvious that we have a couple of things here. We've got the going forward to sort of look at if there's some way we can support people or help them in any way as far as the soil erosion issue for the future. More germane to us, I think, is the discussion about our ditches that aren't going to maybe run water if we get so if we got a couple of inches of rain all of a sudden, Mark or Terry, do we have worst spots that you guys have noted that need to be fixed up right away? Terry, I see you nodding your head, so I'll defer to you.
Okay, I guess I'll speak to it. Yes, we do have areas that are worse than others. We can honestly state that we don't have everything documented, which Todd already spoke to. What has been identified is simply a bit of a mad dash to try to put something together in conjunction with Ag Services to get something in front of council for this meeting. So to get out and get further documentation and get everything identified will take more time, but there are definitely areas that we could focus some efforts on right now that receive higher volumes of runoff if we were to receive a major rain event based on council's direction.
My personal opinion is that involving some of these producers in some way, shape, or form is not a bad thing at all. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel, but I think for them to be part of the solution makes some sense. Brian?
Those words are very, very accurate. I mean, it's the last thing a producer wants to see is his land going off his land, especially that high value soil. And I guess when you think about this, at least I equate it to when there was a flood. The first reaction is that we point fingers and how everything should have been done differently. And while there may be an element of truth to that, having the people involved that are directly affected and probably have a greater understanding of it than at least me would be valuable. I think they could add some great conversation or great suggestions to the equation, and they'll come up with stuff that they have to live with too. So by that, I mean producers.
Are there other ideas on the concept, basically, which Todd has brought forward of establishing a committee involving ratepayers that have been affected to get their thoughts? Because I'm sure they have lots. Wayne, Anne-Marie, Kelly?
I think Todd probably has an idea how he wants to put this. He hasn't voiced it, but how he wants to put this committee together. And I'll just make a motion right now to establish a soil erosion and degradation committee made up of producers in the county of Newell, and put that up to Todd and Mark to decide who should sit on that committee.
Thanks, Wayne. Anne-Marie and Kelly?
It will be good to have that committee. And Todd, you're pretty confident that you can get 6 to 8, maybe even more people that are willing to, just meet even twice to discuss it.
Yeah, I think so. Probably depends on how I word the invitation. But it probably, yeah, you're right. Probably 2 to 3 times it's probably going to be enough to actually get together or virtual, whatever, to figure it out. Probably the first time will be maybe a little bit on the education side of things on the 2 different acts, like the Soil Conservation Act and the ASB Act, and then some basic on how policies work. And then I think it would be a matter of creating something to discuss and then making some amendments and bringing it forward to council for future. So yes, I think we can, long story short.
Kelly?
Yeah, I agree that the consultation with stakeholders is never a bad idea. The choosing of the stakeholders, you get different perspectives, whether it's a landowner who has rented his land out or whether he's a practicing farmer, you get different varying ideas. It all comes back to economics, right? The potato producer, if he's renting, he's offering a higher rate of return on his property than what the guy did putting oats or grain in, right? So you get different ideas from different perspectives. So I would encourage a cross section for sure.
Todd, would you like us to put a number on that, or do you just want to leave it open that, you know, the motion be consisting of landowner representatives?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought of a number specifically, but yeah, that 6 to 8 is probably lots. I'm sure we'll be in the 6 range. That should be enough heads to make some kind of recommendations, and obviously the policy will have to come to council for approval. So then we'll have 10 more wonderful opinions as well on how we can move that forward. So I told you I'm being as political as possible. No, I think 6 to 8 would be a great number, and I appreciate the support to get this going. Of note, I asked the province if anybody had ever set up an advisory committee, and nobody was able to push me towards somebody that had done it before. So we might be first at this again.
Well, that's okay too. So any other comments on that part of this discussion in regards to the committee? Clarence?
Always have trouble finding my mic. My mouse never seems to be in the right position. But anyway, I think the first thing we have to do, and I agree fully with the committee and stakeholders, but I think first of all, one should get a real good idea of the extent of the problem and document it. And I think with that documentation, I think you need stakeholder input, because I think you have to say, okay, why did my field blow? And then I think you have to say, you know, so that's the producer side of it that you have to get a handle on, and you know, the extent of the problem and how serious it really is as far as the municipality and as far as producers are concerned. The second part of this thing right now, of course, is we need to also have that data for ourselves so that we can determine what do we have to remedy, because some of our infrastructure is not working the way it's supposed to. So I think before we get the committee even together, we can look for members, but I think they also have to know the extent of the problem and how and why it was that way, and where the problems are and so forth. But they also have to have an appreciation for how it affects the municipality that they live in. And so that's my only 2 comments that I would have.
And not to steal us away from you, Molly, I think I appreciate those comments very much, Clarence. And that was one thing that Mark and Terry and I and Will had talked about yesterday, is just what is the extent. You know, maybe once the snow melted underneath, we're going to note that there's not as bad in some areas as others, and you know what constitutes needing to be cleaned up right away and not, and then obviously the estimated cost. And I think those are very important conversations, and probably could go in tandem with creating the committee for sure, because it's not going to be an easy job for us to figure that infrastructure cost out. And we'll probably have to bring in the EID at some point in time to figure out any of theirs that has been impacted as well, right?
There'd be Alberta Transportation too involved, wouldn't there? Clarence, again, Wayne?
And I guess with that, I mean, it's a lot of work, and I don't know if we have the manpower, but you know, I would be quite prepared if we get some kind of a recommendation from our staff that they need, perhaps it's a summer student who is very well versed in that, or perhaps it's somebody else, but to have somebody dedicated to do some of this work, because it's all work that nobody expected to have.
Sort of a taking inventory for a start. Wayne.
Just went out and looked out my picture window, and there's a bunch of land moving today again to the north of me. A big dust going up there, so we're gonna see this all spring. This is the type of year. And Lionel said before, back in the 80s, it was doing it, and farmers learned how to control it. Unfortunately, the memories are short, and they'll have to learn this all over again.
Let's hope it's just a dry spring and not a dry summer as well. Okay, any other comments then? Lionel.
Just one comment about cycles, and these dry periods tend to last a while. They don't go, they're not one-ofs. And we've seen that in the past. I've taken a couple of seminars on cycles, and they're well documented, and they don't come just 1 year. This will probably last 10 years.
Just like the wet years did. Because
That's
when we first
Yeah.
came on council, some of us, wet years began, and there was a lot of flooding and a lot of strange things happened then. So absolutely. All right, we have a motion on the floor, basically, that is to set up an advisory committee for soil erosion degradation consisting of 6 to 8 landowner representatives for the purpose of establishing a policy for future soil erosion concerns. I don't think we need to add in anything else there. As our staff knows, it's a fairly broad-based thinking committee, however they want to approach it. And staff, you are okay with the whole concept of trying to get a grip on how bad this is and where you'd have to watch out to start with moving forward as far as the drainage or whatever might come into play. If it never rains, I guess it's not as big an issue. Maybe it'll blow out of the ditches and back onto somebody's field, but probably not. Are you okay going forward to come up with something?
If I may, I think that first part is fantastic, and I appreciate the support on that. I think we're going to come up with a great vision for the future. The one question that I think we probably need to answer, maybe after this motion is through or done, but who's going to bear the cost of any of the cleanup? That just changes the conversation that we have to have with anybody that was affected. Because our bylaw states that we won't allow other people's to work in our ditch unless they have our approval. And our approval will come with stipulations. So if they can't work within those stipulations, then we have to do the work. And if that's charged back to them, that it's just a different conversation.
Okay, we will have it. So let's have a vote on the concept of the committee, first of all. Are there any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And so moving forward on this, once the investigation is more complete on what has to be done, in the past, have people worked in their ditches adjacent to their land under our conditions? Todd or Mark or Terry, somebody?
There have been a few, and I mean very few instances where it has been authorized. Typically, we are most interested in who is effectively going to carry out the work. There are other legislations at play, such as getting your locate for ground disturbance. So Todd has identified some of those soils buildups are 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep. Any soil disturbance greater than 6 inches, I think it is, right, Terry, requires an Alberta 1 call locate to be completed in the area so that no underground facilities are damaged in the course of work. So we need to play within those rules and things as well. We have obviously also found instances in the past where people have gone and done things without our previous knowledge or prior approval. That what do you do after the fact? So education again on that, but how do we get ahead of it now? Because some people have already been at play, and as much as I appreciate them potentially taking ownership for what's been done, we do need to take appropriate steps forward to ensure that infrastructure damage is limited, if not completely eliminated out of the equation, to keep costs and disturbances to anybody else at a minimum. So obviously in this case, it shouldn't be anybody digging 8 feet deep to get soil recovery done. But there are shallower utilities like our telephone lines and things like that that we always hear about, that are always the problem. And we need to make sure that anybody that is doing work is doing it appropriately within our region.
So in the past, you've run into this at times. I would think not just with moving dirt in ditches, but snow and, I mean, during flooding, I'm sure there's people that do things that are out of the ordinary and not always what you would hope for them to do. So you maybe have some past ideas of what works. I mean, right now, obviously, communication is a big one. So letting people know that they can't just go out and start digging in a ditch without locates and those sorts of things, or permission, or county being involved. Things like that. Like, are you guys talking about any of that stuff, or are you just, I mean, it's not going to work to say that you just, the county doesn't want to do all the work, but they want to make sure the work is done properly, I guess, or I don't know. What's council thinking? Hubie, Brian?
Some areas where the ditch is already full, has been for years. so the road doesn't drain off properly off the crown into the ditch, because there is no more ditch. So there's areas like that too. So who cleans all that up? There's lots of it.
That was there before these winds, Hubie. That's what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Brian?
I don't know how you can put the responsibility on when we didn't have a bylaw in place. It's sort of like trying to put the cat back in the cage after you've let it out. So I don't know how we go about this without taking the responsibility on at this point ourselves. I think moving forward, if this committee comes up with a recommendation that moves that onus on to the producer, that's great. But I think at this point in time, it's pretty difficult for us to come back and say, well, there's damage done now, because we don't have anything in place. I know there's you referenced stuff in the Soil Conservation Act and that, but in our own bylaws, I would find it hard to support something after the fact.
I'm certainly not wanting to suggest illegal or unlawful procedures going forward, for sure.
No, but I think Todd was asking about who's going to pay for this, or Mark was, I can't remember, but and I think that's where I'm coming from, is that we don't have something in place. The County of Lethbridge does have some, and maybe that's the direction we end up going. I'm not opposed to that. I just don't think you can do it after the fact.
Lionel?
Yeah, I agree with your comments there, Brian. Even you mentioned the Soil Conservation Act, but as a producer, I would suggest very few producers have ever read the Soil Conservation Act. They don't understand what's in it, and including myself until today. So I agree with your comments there, Brian. We can't go backwards, and we'll go forwards from here. If we're going to make policy, that'll be for in the future, not for the past.
So Todd, that's accurate then, that we have nothing in place except the overriding provincial acts?
Not entirely. We do have the one bylaw 1742-11, unauthorized road use development. It's relatively weak in that, but that's the bylaw we were talking about that we reference when landowners are doing work within our right-of-way. I think it's section 2 of that bylaw, no unauthorized use or development. That's kind of where that stuff is. Just one second. I just don't want to say the wrong thing here. Allow work to be done under 2C and D. So 2C says no person shall remove or permit to be removed any gravel, soil, or other material from any road or portion thereof, except in accordance with a license granted for the County of Newell. So that's where we were talking earlier about if we were going to request that a landowner clean up the soil that came from their land in our ditch, we would have to give them authorization to do so on each one of those project areas. And then C just kind of speaks to the same thing. Oh, sorry. D speaks to the same thing, just about equipment. So we would have to do that. And then when you get into E, F, and even I believe G, yes, it does state in our bylaw that, no person shall do or permit anything to interfere with the drainage of a road. No person shall deposit or allow to be deposited any material or substance of any kind on the road or any portion thereof, etc. And then no person shall allow soil to be eroded from their property and deposited onto a road or any portion thereof. So we can, from that, in section H, remove and dispose of any soil material, etc. We can clean up and repair any damage to the road caused or contributed by any person contrary to provisions of this bylaw. Take any steps that determined are necessary or desirable in our sole discretion to restore the road condition to its immediately prior to the contravention's provisions. And then we can add on the fines and penalties if we so desire. So that's the bylaw that we have. It outlines it. I know it used to be part of our soil conservation manual that we created in 2004 that we haven't used, a whole heck of a lot since 2004. The maximum fine on this this bylaw is $2,500. So that covers about a day of a hoe to start cleaning the ditch.
Right.
And then I know that the one thing that me, Mark, and Terry discussed, and I think most people would agree, is that the best place for the soil that's in the ditch to go back to is the place it came from. Because although we know it's topsoil and there's organic matter and there's nutrients, we spoke specifically to one landowner that had placed a pre-emergent herbicide. Well, we don't want to have responsibility for taking that soil and putting it someplace else because we don't even know what's in there. I mean, we have another policy on clubroot. We don't know what's in that soil. So the best place for it to go, technically, in my opinion, is back to where it came from. I know I probably caused more damage stating that stuff than I probably helped, but anyways, we do have a bylaw, and we think it's best that the dirt goes back to where it came from.
Yes, and so, as I was saying, like how that happens, if it needs to happen quickly, that's going to be a whole different matter than if you're going to pull a committee together and have discussions about anything. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you think there will be people that have ditches and around their areas that want to get in there and pull the dirt back and put it on their land? Yes.
Yeah, we had that offer already from one of the producers that had some land below.
Yeah. Lionel?
Just a question about the soil that's in the burrow pits that have moved into burrow pits. Did it all come from the one storm, or is it an accumulation of maybe a number of years of soil movements? Because it seems to me that we've seen it here before, but it took many years to actually fill those burrow pits.
Yeah, not to take away from that at all, Lionel. I'm sure there is dirt that has blown and has filled in other spots that we didn't note on our tour. I would say that the vast majority of what we seen in that short video was from the one event or that week. I mean, we had the 29th and the 31st, I believe. There was kind of a little bit of wind on both days, and then the Friday as well. I think there was some movement, if I remember right, or one of the days. So the same week. Once things start, they don't tend to stop until something changes.
So staff, you have a desire to treat everyone the same, obviously, on this. That's one of your concerns too, not to cause more problems, obviously. So is allowing one farmer to go and clean up his ditches means that all farmers pretty much would have that option? Is that fair comment?
I think that would be fair to say that the opportunity would exist. Whether they have the time or the equipment or the expertise to do so, I don't know that.
Right. And so if I mean, if something like this was going to happen, there would have to be lots of conditions met for these people to do the work.
We would
Yeah.
certainly want it to be done
On a
appropriately.
license that stipulates Alberta one call locate, safe digging practices, exposure of utilities. County knows and authorizes who's going to be doing the excavation, and that it's not necessarily a farmer with a front end loader bucket on a tractor going back and forth on the road, because then you need some traffic control as well, right? As much as some people may figure it's not warranted, it is warranted, so.
Again, that would be up to that person, would it not?
It'd be part of the condition, and I guess complaint based or to be found otherwise, yes, you would be correct.
And maybe not to take away from this at all, but if that's the direction that we want to go, Molly, I think we can work out the details with the producers to do it.
And I don't know if that is the direction. I'm trying to get something out of other people as well here. So what do you guys, what does staff think of that? Is it worth talking about, or is it not?
Well, I think, I mean, we've been at this an hour or roughly. You could see why it's kind of been a big conversation for us, right?
Yeah.
And we don't exactly have the political minds that you guys do to know which direction to take. So that's kind of why we're in front of you guys today, looking for that near specific direction, one way or another. The details we can figure out, but the direction would be great.
Yep. Absolutely. So, councillors, Brian's hand is up.
Well, I would never support anything that isn't vetted the proper way as Mark laid it out. Either it has to be somebody that has the capabilities to fill all the requirements to work in our county right away, or it has to be a county right away person that we contract that knows what they're doing in there. But I could not support just something that is random and left up to the individual producer. And I mean, that's the consequences. It's our right of way. If they bugger up utilities, that comes back to us. And so ultimately, whether it's a utility or it's in our right of way, we have to respect it like we were doing the work ourselves. And that doesn't mean there isn't producers that can't do it. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that it has to be ones that are fully capable of filling the requirements that Mark laid out as far as working in our right of ways.
Yes. Other thoughts? Is it just one or the other? Like we either do it all ourselves, we have a mix, or we let, like, help, guys? What are your thoughts? Clarence, Kelly?
Well, I think, I don't know, there's so many different variables here that I'm not quite sure that we have a handle on it or can make decisions today. And I'll put one thing forward, and you say, well, we're going to put that soil back to where we found it. Well, something's happened in our yard this year that I've never seen before. We had a snowdrift, it was probably about 200 feet long, running from the north of our yard into a lower spot and up the other side. Now, when it's melted, I got an inch of dirt there. I couldn't believe it. There is that much dirt there. So where did that dirt come from? I haven't got a clue. It could have come from Tilly. So somebody, and what I'm trying to, and I don't want to really throw cold water on it, but it's a problem. How do we prove that the dirt came from that field? That's one thing that's running through my mind. How do we do that? Secondly, I'm damn sure that somewhere along the line, there's going to be a farmer that has a hi-ho and that has a truck, and he's got 100 yards of dirt sitting in there that he thinks came from his farm. And before we even get out there, it's going to be back on his somewhere in a low spot in the field. How do we combat that? Well, the same way as we combat who cultivates right up to the road allowance and into the ditch. What do we do there? Like it's mind-boggling to me where this is going to start and where it's going to end. And I think we have to be a little bit careful on how we proceed. So I still really want to know the extent of the problem. I want to document it. I want to have a look at it. And then perhaps from that discussion and from that knowledge, we can make some kind of a decision. I'm all for education from that perspective and how we can help farmers and how they can do that. But people do dumb things sometimes. And how do you connect the dumb things from something that nobody really has any control over? How do you differentiate? How do you differentiate from a flood that was caused by something or something that was just a natural occurrence? Like, this is why we're talking for an hour, and this is why staff has come to us. And I think we have to do one step at a time. We have to know what the problem is. We have to know how it was, mostly how it was there. Are there places where we really don't know where the dirt came from? How long has the dirt been there? Like, it's on and on and on and on. And I'm not sure we have a handle on it right now without getting some documentation.
Kelly and Lynn.
Well, my line of thinking was going around the snow. Our theory is it lies where it falls, right? It's a natural occurrence. I don't know that this is any difference. If it's landed in our ditch, it's our cleanup. I would have trouble supporting random people claiming their dirt. And it could cause a ruckus too amongst neighbors. That's my dirt. No, that's my dirt. So to me, the wind caused the disturbance. The wind laid it in our ditches. It's our cleanup. Sounds too simple and expensive.
It also has no consequence for future times when that happens again.
Well, and that is where I see your policy and your group working into the future, Todd. We can't change what has happened, but we can try our darndest to prevent a future occurrence. My thoughts.
Any other thoughts? Lon, I think you had your hand up.
I think we have to be very careful allowing individuals to do their own work. Reason being, and I've seen it around here, we do have an individual who tends to help himself sometimes. And he himself personally might be a very good operator, but he doesn't do it himself. He has hired help who maybe are not as capable as he is. And his hired help goes and helps himself to some gravel and such and leaves a mess. And so I'm very adamant that we don't allow individuals to do that work. There are some very conscientious ones, I do agree, but they're not all that. And if we're going to go police their work, that's going to create another issue.
So question, staff, if we waited till our next staff meeting to get more information on exactly what's out there, how is that going to what will that mean to you guys? You think there's going to be people just going out doing their own thing anyhow, or you said that's already beginning, Mark?
They've already started, yes. Even in my drive around, I was capable of identifying where somebody had begun playing in the ditch. They weren't there when I was there, and that's always the question. Well, was it them or was it somebody else? You don't know until you've been caught in the act, right? But most definitely, if we are on pause right now for the next 2 weeks to bring more information back to council, we should be pushing out some notification, whether that's advertisement in the bulletin, social media, website. This is the bylaw. These are the things that have resulted due to the recent windstorms with soil erosion off of various properties. Nobody is hereby authorized to be within the road allowance, excavating or recovering any of that material. Anybody found doing such is going to what? Are we educating or are we enforcing? Because this is where we have been for my tenure, is that unless it's gross, we don't enforce. We educate, educate, educate. And I guess I find myself stuck in that right now, and I think that's where we're having a challenge with this discussion is we are so focused on education that maybe enforcement is long overdue, because people do feel that, well, I can just go do it because I'll only be educated on the matter. I won't have any consequences, which is what Todd has said. And I get it. That's a, which way does that decision fall? But yes, people are out there already, and of course they're itchy at doing it because the ones that do feel responsible, feel accountable, and do have a desire to get it cleaned up, but are they doing it appropriately? Because they haven't asked any of us yet. Nobody's been authorized to do so under a license yet. And just as the discussion was that, you know, people don't understand the Soils Conservation Act, people aren't aware of it, people that are in the industry, there are lots of things that we don't understand either. And we are professionals and specialists in our areas of responsibility. And that's not a great thing to admit, but between an act, a regulation, a code, the MGA, our own bylaws and policies, whoever truly knows it all. It's very challenging, but I do think we have to get that communication out there if we are on pause today with this. If we're not on pause with it, we still have to get the communication out there to tell them and inform them what the appropriate process is for going about executing that work. So if things are cleaned up and there's nothing left to do, what's the recourse on that? And things that have gone untouched, at least we can further document and bring back for council. But we can also report on what we've seen has been touched by allegedly the neighboring parcel landowner or renter, I guess, to be fair, because we're dealing with both, right?
Well, I think that sounds reasonable to get out the information. I mean, there is a bylaw that is available, and so I think the important parts of that can be made public, and maybe you'll get some phone calls. How fast do you think you would get this committee organized?
Yeah, and that's why we kind of separated the two ideas a little bit, because the committee is more, in my opinion, a long-term solution to a problem that's been gaining ground. Where we've been talking about for the last little bit about cleanup is a more immediate need so that we can run water, you know, off the road through our drainage works into the EID drainage works and back to where it needs to be. So, but I think if I might recap just a tiny bit of what I heard, because I think we already have some pretty decent direction now. We got to get some information out, let people know that we need to do an assessment, that we want to make sure that the ditches are cleaned up to our standards, and that we're about 98% sure that we are going to be in charge of that work. Does that that's the education that we need to get out in the short term. And then what we have to actually do is commit the resources to go and do a very thorough investigation and survey of what is there and what the cost might be and what the timelines might be, and then bring that back. What I can't commit is that we'll have that information for you in April's meeting, because I think that's just a tiny bit more than we can bite off right now.
Yeah, and that's fair, Todd. And I think because our concern is how our ditches are used for the movement of drainage, that has to be sort of the first thing on our list. Somebody had their hand up. Wayne.
Yeah, I think we're playing too much politics here right now. I think that if somebody's ditch and his land was blowing and the ditch is full, he gets charged. They all know if their land was filling that ditch. They all know they're not supposed to go into our ditch and start cleaning it up. There's guys that go out there. Our grader doesn't get there soon enough, so they go out on the road and they grade it themselves. They're not supposed to do that. They know they're not supposed to do that, but they get away with it, and we educate them. I'm tired of it. Mark was saying this could cost $500,000 to clean these ditches up. Is it fair for a ratepayer in Tilly, who's got a little house there and a little piece of grass, paying his taxes to the county to help clean that up? He had nothing to do with that land blowing. It was that landowner or the renter, whoever's in charge of that land. It was his fault the land was blowing. And you can't blame him. Oh, it's bad conditions. This is southern Alberta. It blows. And you should be aware of that at all times. And why should everybody else pay for your mistakes? I'm sorry. This is getting tiring. We should be getting hard on these guys and educate, sure, and get this advisory committee going. But if they start going in our ditches and cleaning up, that's wrong. They shouldn't be doing it, and we should come down hard on them.
Anne Marie.
It sounds like we have a plan in place. We need to educate. We need to tell people that this is the problem we're dealing with. We have, I'm sure, spots that need direct attention where culverts are plugged up. I mean, it's going to cost us money, but we need to fix it. And then with the advisory committee coming up, and it doesn't have to be in 2 weeks, you know, whenever you get that going, then that would set our tone for the future. And that could include fines, Wayne, but maybe for right now, let's stick to education. Let's stick to getting information and cleaning up the problem areas that need to be cleaned before we get rain. We might get piles of rain, Wayne, and then the guy in Tilly, his backyard will be flooded, and then other ratepayers in Rosemary will have to pay for that too. So it goes as a region.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I think we'll go back to what Todd was saying, that they do have a bit of a grip on what's going to take place going forward. It might not be ready for the 15th, or I should say the 22nd, which is understandable. They can chip away at it as best as possible, but for me, it's more important to figure out what we need to do for our county residents, generally speaking. If we get big rains, we've got to look after the drainage issue. And in the meantime, if the dirt lays in the ditch in front of somebody's field, that for a while it's going to have to be there.
Your mic is off, Molly.
Staff, you have a bit of a feeling for how you're right, this is difficult? Matt?
Hearing things right. I've heard the county is going to be on the hook for this cleanup. We're going to get Todd and a good crew together to inform our policies and our actions moving forward. It sounds also like time is of the essence. I'm wondering if it might be appropriate, and I've heard support from some councillors that if there's additional staffing that we need to document the issues and get the cleanup going, there's potentially support for that. Would it be appropriate to approve additional funding now so we can begin moving forward if there's some of these producers who have already approached Todd and are ready to go within the constraints that we've already got in place, that we can move some of this work forward? You know, Terry and Mark have set up to 500,000. I don't know if we want to approve an additional 500,000 right now, but you know, if we approved an additional 100,000 to get us going right now, if there's work that we can move on, that we start this work now.
Thanks, Matt. Somebody want to talk to that, or that would give staff flexibility to possibly hire some people, Matt, you're thinking, if needed to be done?
Yeah, I'm thinking there's probably locations that are higher priority than others. If there are producers out there who are motivated to foot the bill and work within the constraints that Mark and his guys have put together, that I don't think we want to be slowing down the effort, but we do want to make sure that it's controlled and that our right-of-ways are put back to the state that they were in previous. You know, whether it's hiring a couple of summer students that end up documenting the entire extent of the issue, or if it's our own staff, whatever we need to kind of move forward and get those drains cleaned up before we start seeing April showers and into May.
Kelly?
I'm in favor of that, and I'm willing to make a motion to allow staff to move on that as discussed.
So Matt, do you want a money value put on it, or just as determined by staff moving forward?
I think we should have a dollar limit on it and identify that it comes from the stabilization fund. So I don't know, I'll rely on my staff here for a reasonable estimate for us to start moving on this, whether it's 100,000 or what you guys are kind of thinking there. But I don't think we want to sit around for 2 weeks on this.
Okay, is 100,000 a good number, staff, for a start?
It gets us started. If we're, and we don't know whether we're going to be able to access the EID or not based on what they currently have on the go, but if the $2,000 a day for an excavator and it can be worked out that the material in the roadside ditch gets flopped on the adjacent parcel, it keeps costs at a minimum. If it can't be worked out with the adjacent landowner to put it on that land, then we got to truck it. It could be upwards of $4,000 a day per location. I want to be honest about that. That's per location. So if we get multiple crews going, we'll chew that up, but that gives us a number of days to work at least. And within 2 weeks, we can give you an update as to where we're at, even between documentation as well as anything that needed to be cleaned up that was more or less seen as urgent or imminent in reducing overland flooding potential in the event we get another act of God, perhaps.
Perfect. So Kelly's motion would be for $100,000 from the stabilization fund to proceed with staff's work on the soil issue. Any other questions? Lionel?
Not a question, but a comment. So if most of this damage was done in one event, and we go and clean it up, we could get another event like that right after it gets cleaned up. And so that money would be basically wasted, or not wasted, but it could double the cost if you have to do it twice. So, you know, the mitigation of preventing any more erosion may be a better starting point.
Yeah, I think they'll come together at the same time, Lionel, because we're going to have conversations with those landowners that seen their soil blow into the ditch to let them know that we're going to be the person in charge of making sure it gets done. So we're going to have that conversation. I know there's two areas that I specifically am thinking about that we probably need to get done relatively soon, and they're the same landowner, so that one makes it kind of easy, I guess. But we have to have that conversation, and they're the landowner that already reached out to us to start doing the work. So I think some of that education, not to take away from that, but that education on stopping the erosion and the education about cleaning out the ditches will happen at the same time, or coming up with the numbers will happen at the same time. Does that kind of take away some of your concern, Lionel?
Yes, thanks, Todd. Yes.
Like, I haven't decided how I'm going to do all this, but it sounds like fun.
And truly, I believe our first job, as I've said a few times, is to look after our issues. And at the same time as we get the committee started and the whole discussion started. But we don't have to put a lot of work into moving dirt out of somebody's field or out of one of our ditches onto a field tomorrow. Mark.
And I would just like to comment back to Councillor Just that I've at least been reassured being in the field in some of those wind events. I'm not going to say it's going to alleviate or prevent it from happening again, but as Todd said earlier, some of these producers are taking action right now, getting manure spread on their soils, doing some other cultivation work and stuff like that to bring some lumps to the surface. So fingers crossed it is mitigated moving forward, or at least minimal compared to what's been experienced off of that same field if there is a future event. But I just wanted to reiterate that because we are seeing positive actions being taken by those producers. Majority of them, I can't say all because I haven't been out that much to see everything in every area going on, but it is reassuring to see that they are stepping up on their land, doing things. And even in whatever it was on April 1st, literally no joke because it was in the afternoon. Some farmers out there with cultivation equipment, and it was making a difference visible to my eye when I was documenting things that this part of the field is still blowing, that part of the field has stopped. So just to give you some reassurance, can't say it would alleviate future and doing it twice, but there's things being put into place to help that.
Good to hear. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for your ongoing patience, everyone. Todd, anything else on this today?
Well, I took up more of your time today than I historically, at least in recent years, have. I want to thank you for having this conversation. It wasn't easy. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again at some point in time. I appreciate the support in setting up the committee, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to making some changes. So, Terry and Mark, been great to deal with on this. I know it's shocking. It's the second time I've said that today. But no, I think, like I say, I appreciate you guys taking the time and helping us through this. So.
Well, thank you, Todd. You know, when you don't take much of our time, normally you get to take as much as you want to when these things happen. So
Good.
It's all good. Thank you. So we'll move on then to throughout our agenda to, the annual report. I believe is next on the agenda, item 10.2. Oh, shoot. And basically, this is there for information, I'm thinking, or any comments or corrections or questions. Any issues, Anne-Marie?
Well done, well put together. I liked your message at the beginning. Just wondering what we're going to do with it. Is it only going to be on our website? Is it going to be mailed out? Are we going to consider a Zoom meeting, a Zoom AGM, life size?
Well, we haven't had an AGM for a long time, have we? Ariana?
I can answer the part about what happens with it afterwards. So we don't print it in the paper anymore. We post it to the website, but we do put an ad in the paper telling people where they can find it, and we'll also push it out over social media and stuff like that.
Does that answer your question, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, then, you know, I know it's available. I can tell people where it's available. And as far as the AGM, is our general feeling that we should wait till COVID is over?
Well, we haven't had an annual meeting in person for, what, 4 or 5 years now? So I'm not sure if we want to start it up again during COVID, personally, but.
No, I don't want to start it up during COVID either. And the reason for not having one was mostly because nobody showed up. So
right.
We could just leave it.
Yeah, that is what we have been doing. So perhaps as soon as we can meet again, people will come out to our AGM. Lionel.
Just one comment. I'm wondering why, Molly, your picture came from the Brooks Bulletin.
Well, it was the same picture as last year, I believe. I sort of chuckled when I saw it. Should I get a new picture? Ariana put it all together, so you can ask her about that, Lionel. Ariana, do you have any thoughts?
If you want to put a new picture in there, we can put a new picture in there. You just have to provide one.
I did a selfie for something. These days, you know, you just don't go places to get your pictures taken. But so you would like it to be a more County of Newell picture, Lionel? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I was just being a little facetious, that's all.
Okay.
It's just fine, Molly.
Well, I didn't recognize this brown-haired lady. It's been over a year now, and I had to do a double take. Like, who is that now?
Well, maybe I can pop by the office and Ariana can snap one that's more recent. Or I can put the very first year in.
I did not notice your hair color change at all. I think it looks great. Leave it. I didn't even realize that. I mean, I looked at it yesterday when in the report, and I looked at your photo, and I didn't even notice that the color difference. So I'm sure no one else does either.
I don't think I've seen you since COVID, Ellen, obviously. I look different in person. I mean, I'm not too worried about it anyway. Lionel?
Still on pictures, I was quite impressed by Mark's picture of the owl.
It is a good picture. Much better than my horned owl picture last year, I have to say. All right, so we don't have to approve that or anything, Ariana. It's just there for our information, correct?
Unless you identified any changes you wanted or typos.
Doesn't sound like it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to Citizen of the Year. And this is a request for National Volunteer Week. I think. Somebody make a motion for the proclamation for Volunteer Week. QB will do that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Is that all there is on that item, Ariana? They just start letting us know about getting in nominations and requesting the volunteer proclamation?
I think so. I don't think they have an actual, I think the letter mentions they have recognition plans, but it's obviously not going to be a gala like it usually is. So I'm not sure they've figured out the actual recognition part yet. Maybe someone on FCSS knows more than me.
They'll probably ask for letters or something maybe later then. Perfect. Okay, and another request for proclamation for Seniors Week. Anne Marie will make that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Assessment model changes. Just a reminder that some of us are meeting with Rick McIver next week, and I am hoping that certainly the members of that committee will be able to attend at 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 13th. Ariana has the link, or has sent it out, I believe. Checks for payment, questions and a motion, if there are any. Brian?
Make the motion to accept the checks for payment.
Perfect. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And motion to accept the payment. Oh, no, that's what we just did. No, that was checks for payment. Now for the payment register. Tracy moves acceptance. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Requests for functions of council. And we've got 11.2, Mark.
Forgot I was coming back to the meeting. Anyway, Lionel, thanks for the comments on the horned owl, and I'll share with everybody that I'm usually a person that takes numerous photos of the same things because there's always a blurry one and one where somebody had their eyes closed or whatever. That horned owl actually regurgitated something that was in its mouth, and I missed capturing that moment because I could not figure out what it was doing. I thought it was going to croak and fall right off the freaking barn there. So Anyways, to my report. Really, municipal enforcement activities, they're pretty standard. The guys continue to patrol. Probably the most significant thing that has happened, if you have not read the Brooks Bulletin, we did unfortunately lose one of our patrol units in that winter storm event on March 29th. We received a call out from the Brooks RCMP for assistance and traffic control on Highway 1 due to the situation that they were dealing with there. And in the effort of response, that officer was involved in an accident. We have not heard word back from the insurer, but we are estimating that that unit is a total loss. So we are down to one peace officer patrol unit that is fully deckled and meeting the Solicitor General and Justice Office for Community Peace Officer Enforcement. We have put another unit into service from our fleet from another division for our other officer to act as a bylaw officer, being that he is granted bylaw status under our municipal partnerships. Pisano, Rosemary, Village of Dutchess, and can enforce local bylaws in our own communities when he is operating that unit, because he is not, I don't believe he's been cleared yet to use his full community peace officer uniform. When they're not in that full uniform, they can't enforce everything. So working with that situation, the only positive story about that one is that the new patrol unit that was to replace that unit that was lost is in manufacture right now. We are waiting for the dealership to receive it. Then it must also go to a third party to have the lighting, the radar, and all those other fun extras added to that unit before it's put in service. But delivery of the unit is unknown. COVID has drastically impacted how dealerships are receiving units. If you haven't noticed, there are a lot of dealerships that their lots are very sparse in available sales units. So, and we don't just buy a patrol unit, they are specialty builds. So it will show up hopefully sometime this year, but it took us approximately 11 months to receive regular half-ton and three-quarter-ton fleet last year from when we actually awarded the tenders. So sometime this year, but we'll make do. We did receive our new plow truck finally. That was ordered back in 2020. We finally just received it here last month. And so that is being equipped. It double duty as a gravel truck, so we're getting that rigged up and ready for the graveling season, and then it'll be ready for the winter season next fall. Aside from that, vegetation management program is wrapped up. Grader operators have obviously transitioned to maintaining gravel roads. We have had them on their arterial collector routes, the highest traveled corridors, before branching off, moving over to local roads. Due to the dry winter that we truly had, there was a lot of washboard out there, and they are contending with that right now. Some obviously got shut down today due to the amount of moisture that accumulated, because the road surface material was just balling up on their blades and making nothing but great big mud lumps everywhere and stuff. We do plan on kicking them out on 10-hour shifts here moving forward to try to take advantage of that moisture to get things graded up and lock that moisture into that road bed and get it tight. So that's what they're working with, as well as we're in frost boil season, roads are thawing, soft road conditions otherwise, so trying to work with those things. Truck drivers, winter stockpiling's complete, well in advance of previous years, so getting those truck drivers to respond to these frost boil soft spots early on, see if we can't get them controlled and stuff, is great. And then, of course, we still have snow fence and other things to take down as well, that as we need that labor, we will pull it over to those areas. What else we got? I guess a reminder for council, any areas that did receive brush control this year where it was use of a chainsaw cutting down trees, Any of those remaining stumps and stuff, we will be coming back to clean those up and get them ground down to the surface of the ditch or the back slope. So don't worry, we will be there eventually. It just got to let those ditches kind of firm up after thaw here before the guys get after that stuff. Engineering, you can see we got a number of things on the go there with the Range Road 14.5 paving from Full Slope Tripping Yard down to City of Brooks. That's on the go with engineering and such. Long range aggregate plan. Phase 1 is in progress. One Tree Road overlay bridge files are complete. Overlay work is scheduled. And the North Headgates property, obviously Jeff is on top of all of those matters. Spring bridge deck cleaning and sweeping will be taking place soon. Street sweeping, there's an article, our new old half section, quarter section, whatever we call it in the newspaper there. Street sweeping in Hamlets. We affirmed those dates up to be April 20th through 22nd. April 20th will be the county admin, parking lot out front and Lake Newell Resort. Scandia and Rolling Hills will be April 21st and Tilly April 22nd. Of course, weather pending, fingers crossed. We will have advertising and local signage in each of those communities, giving that little bit of heads up as to when it's coming. So, and then the main road in Patricia, Center Street, we will sweep that when we are out there with the loader with the angle mounted broom attachment doing highways. We will do Center Street at the same time. And small update to the permit activity report. I do have March statistics now. There were 247 permits issued, which is good compared to this time last year when COVID first hit and had significant impact. We are actually up over the February period of 160. So kind of hoping that this is a positive trend, even in light of the recent announcement from the province. So that's where my report sits, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Mark, when you mentioned Bantry Bay, or North Headgates, I should say, and a successful completion of that project this summer, successful completion means what?
Subdivision will be completed, roads will be fully constructed, ditches, all the utilities and everything done.
Awesome. Wayne?
That means forests will be all finished in there. Also, all the power lines will be exactly where they should be put.
Approximately 50% of those power lines were relocated this winter based on where road construction and things have been done, and they will chase the completion of road construction and stuff on this next stage of things.
Any other questions? If not, could we get a motion? Oh, Wayne, sorry.
Do we get a tour of the place once you're all done in there?
Free to do whatever council decides. If that's, did you take a tour before we started so you know the before and the after, I guess. That's the most important thing.
I was in there a couple of times and it was kind of a mess.
Well, good. We will accommodate whatever council would like to see and whatever we can do based on this current status of the province, I guess.
Wayne, I just want to say that if we get to the point where we can do a tour, I got better ideas than the Headgates.
Oh, we spent a lot of money. I really would like to get here and see what it looks like.
Take a drive.
I was going to say it's on your way home, so just take a detour.
Oh, we women are witches, Wayne.
The hell of a world without you.
Glad you appreciate that. Okay, we need a motion to accept the municipal reports. Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And seeing nothing else on the agenda, We can adjourn at 2:20, according to my iPad. Brian?
Madam Reeve, could you just have Matt give us a brief update on the lawsuit, the court case that's been filed against us? Sorry, I didn't add it to the post agenda. My apologies.
So, I'm
For the electoral boundary, sorry for the. I just wanted to have an update as far as what after, because there was a hearing, I believe, on the 22nd, and I just wanted to know an update on the status and if he has any information.
Molly, should this be in camera or?
I did not adjourn the meeting then. Sorry. I thought the meeting was over. So Todd, I'm not sure if he's still recording or.
I'm still recording. If you guys wanted to go in camera. I just have to stop.
I don't think it's an in-camera necessary item.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, I didn't think it was. If others think so, that's okay. I just didn't think it was.
No, I don't think it is.
I'll end up punting this one to Lane because he'll have the dates top of mind. I don't think there's been too much apart falling out of that preliminary meeting, but Lane will have the details there.
That is the case. It was actually deferred to a formal hearing that is scheduled for May 27th. So things are in a holding pattern until then. I know that your legal counsel is working on their case and will be submitting it in advance of that hearing. So really not too much else to report for counsel on that one.
Brian, Kelly?
Who will be attending on behalf of our team besides our legal counsel? I guess rather than answering that, I'm going to suggest our CAO and Lane and somebody from council go. I think it's important.
Haven't received any guidance yet from our legal counsel as to who would be involved in that. We anticipate that it is going to be a virtual hearing. It's possible that there's going to be a role for staff to fill in that, but I don't know what the actual proceeding is going to be and how it will be conducted. I will certainly engage with our legal counsel to find out those details, and we'll be able to report back to council on that.
Kelly?
That's where my thinking was going as well. I'm not a legal person, but I do think that showing interest from our side of things is important in legal proceedings. And if we were just to send legal counsel, it seems very blocked or something. So thank you, Lane, and keep us informed on that. I think showing interest goes a ways.
If there is interest on the part of council, would you want us to find out if the hearing is actually open for viewing and observation for others to join in?
Why not?
Okay, we can certainly put that question to them and expect that that may be the case. We'll provide that information as soon as we know.
Sounds good, Lane. It'd just be a matter of seeing if it's open to the public, basically, eh? Because then, like, wouldn't normally things like that be open to the public?
Under normal circumstances, yes, a court hearing would be open to the public. It's just in this case, with it being a virtual hearing, they will obviously have to give out a link, and it's going to be a question of whether they will want to have or will have links that will restrict the ability of people to just jump into the discussion that is taking place before the judge.
Good point. All right. Okay, I'll try again. Is there anything else before I got the new word, before I the adjourn? Okay, 2:25 now. The meeting is adjourned.